Hello my friends, this is Sylvie Curry, Lady of Q, and I'm once again in my kitchen. Today I'm going to cook up some beef stew. Plain, simple, all-American beef stew. I bought a chuck roast, trimmed it up, got some seasonings, spices, veggies, and all that to go along with it. It's been braising for a couple hours, now it's ready to serve. Come and join me for beef stew. These are my ingredients to make this beef stew. I'm going to start out with, I've got 4 cups of beef broth made by Better Than Bouillon beef. I've got a little less than a 3-pound boneless chuck roast, which I'm going to be trimming up. I've got 3 to 4 tablespoons of salt. I've got 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. I've got some avocado oil that I'll be using to brown my beef. I've got a couple of cups of frozen green peas, and that'll be going in at the end. I've got about a half of a red bell pepper, diced. This is about a half of a green bell pepper, diced. This is 3 celery stalks, diced. Half of a medium-sized red onion, diced. 1 medium white onion, diced. I've got some jalapeno, diced. Got 3 pieces of carrots, a couple of teaspoons of pepper, 2 tablespoons of garlic, 8-ounce can of tomato sauce, parsley, which is going to be used mainly as a garnish, all-purpose flour, which will be used to thicken my beef stew. I've got 4 small bay leaves. Ordinarily I'd use 2 regular-sized bay leaves, but these are rather small. I've got about 3 to 4 little things of thyme. This is fresh thyme, sprigs of thyme. And basically, that's all that's going to go into this beef stew. Let's start out by first trimming up this beef. I want to trim this beef by getting rid of a lot of the fat and cutting it into cubes, cutting the meat into cubes. So I'm going to first get rid of these little pieces of flap. Just put, those are good pieces, and just put them to the side. Then I'll trim away a lot of this fat that won't render. And it'd just be chewy if you cooked it with it on there. Take these little end pieces. Then what I like to do is find where there's like a seam and sort of cut through that, thus exposing a lot more of that fat that I want to cut away. I also like to take my kitchen shears and sort of cut off some of that fat that won't render. It just makes it easier to cut with the kitchen shears versus trying to get in there with my knife. And I'll cut these into cubes also. See, once you've parted in that seam, then you can easily get to all this other fat that's in there. And silver skin. I'll bring out my fillet knife so that I can get under that fat, making it easier to trim away. My next step is to add some salt and pepper to my beef, and I'm going to add, this is probably a little less than a tablespoon, and then a teaspoon of the pepper. And we'll just sort of massage that all in. So you can get all that salt to start doing its brining and flavoring of this meat. I have my Dutch oven. I'm going to turn the fire onto medium. I've already put about a couple of tablespoons of that avocado oil in there, and I'm going to be browning my beef. Browning meaning I'm going to caramelize the outside of it, and that's going to add another layer of flavor to this that'll make this beef stew even more yummy. Put my meat in here, paying attention not to put too many pieces in here because I want to make sure that it browns. If you have too many pieces in there, it's just going to steam. Finished with the browning my meat, and you can see I've got a lot of that thyme at the bottom, which is going to add flavor in addition to color to my stew. I've got all my veggies, my onion, bell pepper, jalapenos, red onions. What else did I have in there? Celery. That's all going in. And that's going to help start to release some of that thyme just because of the moisture that's in the veggies. And now I'm going to add in the garlic. 2 tablespoons of minced garlic. A lot of garlic. That's about 8-9 cloves of garlic in there. I'm now going to add my all-purpose flour. And we're just going to cook this a little longer just to get that raw out of that flour. Now I'm going to add in the beef broth. Those veggies have been cooking with the flour in it for maybe about 4 or 5 minutes. Wasn't long. And with that beef broth and that flour, this is going to start thickening up. I'm now going to add in some more of the ingredients. I'm going to start with the tomato sauce. And I'll use a little bit of water to get all of that residual sauce out of there. And that's no more than about a 1/4 cup of water. I'll add the bay leaves, thyme, and Worcestershire sauce. And we'll let that go a second before we add in our meat. The carrots, the peas, and the parsley don't go in till the end. And turn the heat down a little bit. It's on a simmer. We're going to add back in our meat. And this is where we go into a braise mode. It's going to be about an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending upon when this meat gets tender. Can't forget all those juices that are coming out of that meat. Everybody in the pool. Put the top on, and we'll leave a little bit so that some of that steam can escape, and we'll let that braise. We're about an hour and a half into cooking this beef stew, and test of the beef is still not quite the tenderness that I'd like it to have, so I'm going to go a little longer. But at the same time, I'm also going to add my carrots now. And I'll add the peas about 10 minutes before I'm ready to serve. The beef stew is actually done, and I'm going to be adding the green peas to it, and that's the final element. We don't add those early or else they'll turn to mush, and we don't want that. We want them to be slightly firm. So we'll just let that heat up 4 or 5 minutes, and we'll be ready to serve.